and welcome to Food for Data, the interview series. Today we'll be sitting down with James Turner, who is the Global Data Delivery Governance and Quality Director at Diageo. And we will be discussing the Federation of Data Ownership and exploring the challenges and solutions behind this. So welcome to the interview series, James. It'd be great to give a bit of an introduction to our audience today.
Yeah, great, thank you. So my name's James. I've been involved in the data analytics over the last 25 years, various disciplines within the data space, including data governance, data analytics, and data science, mainly within the retail sector and also the manufacturing industry as well. So pleased to be on the conversation with you.
Oh, it's great. It's great. So let's get straight into it. We've both had a conversation around this topic before, as it's quite big for Diageo. How can organisations assess its data literacy and capability, and what factors determine if employees are willing to take on these data-related responsibilities?
So I think the first thing we need to do, I'll ask the question, is what do we mean by data literacy? There is, of course, the aspects of an organisation being able to understand how to use and interpret data to make better decisions with, whether this be identifying revenue generation opportunities, better consumer experiences, or operational inefficiencies. But however, just focusing on this area, I think a cultural change will fall short of where it needs to be. These are typically one-off, expensive activities that are not then embedded into everyday practice or indeed scalable. An organisation needs to embed literacy at the start of each data and analytics delivery, planting the seed and working with the business to evolve literacy through the end-to-end delivery into a sustainable long-term shift. And by adopting a customer-centric delivery approach, where the customer or business plays a central role throughout the programme, delivery ceremonies, and actively sponsors and evangelizes the benefits and responsibilities on data, I think that's a key first step. Mm-hmm. To the question on assessment on where an organisation or how an organisation can assess where they are in this respect, there's a number of things or a few key areas I would look at. Number one, are the data and analytics products and solutions being truly built around a customer-centric experience, where the business users actually play a core role in ongoing agile delivery decisions? Are the business able to articulate the importance of data and their responsibilities towards it? And on the flip side, are the technical teams able to ask the right questions to ensure the solutions meets the customer needs? Are we able to clearly articulate constraints on data? I mean, data is abundant, but there are much fewer sources that are trusted and should be used in decision making. So are users clear on the data gathered, transformation, the lineage, and any impediments that the data would bring with it? Is there a mechanism in place, such as data observability, which enables the business users to take charge of understanding and improve the quality of data? And finally, are there the necessary measurements and feedback loops in place where an organisation is able to measure decisions that have been taken with the data they use? In answering the second part to the question on what determines a willingness to shift the mindset to a more data-led approach, again, I think there's a few areas you can look at. Do the teams and individuals fully understand how the data really benefits them? Do they have clarity on what their roles and responsibilities on data are, and how do they understand how to navigate the supporting functions and operating model within the organisation? Do the right artifacts exist within an accessible and easy to use data catalogue? And do the artifacts allow for simple self-service and knowledge upskilling? Is there excitement on the data solutions through the customer-centric approach, where there is co-design throughout the end-to-end delivery? Do the business feel like they own the solutions and the data? And finally, is the business willing to take an approach where data responsibilities are potentially embedded into the team and individual objectives as well?
Amazing. So a lot to think about, really. But what would you say are some of the considerations when implementing data federation models into different domains? And how would you say an organization determines its level of maturity in this regard?
Sure. Well, in most organizations, there'll be a varying range of data maturity and literacy across, for example, markets, brands, functions, domains, and teams. And it can feel overwhelming to look at the whole piece. I think to simplify, it's key to understand the priorities of the business, i.e., what are the business capabilities that have core focus over the next sort of 1 to 3 years, whether that be customer acquisition, sales execution, sustainability, or people strategy. And then you layer on the maturity levels against these. And this will ensure that you're focusing your effort in the most critical areas, which will have the executive support hopefully around it, and be the most and have the most sort of focused resource associated with it. It's very important to break the whole piece into chunks. But there's also a need to have a consistent data ownership and management model across the domains to avoid ambiguity. You want to have that consistent approach where you can. So whilst domains will have different goals, there is a balance between agility and central governance principles. Ultimately, the power of data is at its highest when data points across domains can be connected for a holistic view of the product and the customer, and ensuring domains have the freedom to operate, but do so within guidelines, means that there is a freedom to work in a way that suits the domains, but also delivers against essential data and analytics strategy. And finally, data transformation is cultural. It's an ongoing shift, and therefore it's wise not to expect any overnight results.
Of course. Now, I suppose this area comes with some challenges, which you've probably faced yourself, James. How have you overcome fostering a data-centric culture within a business? And how can that transparency be improved in terms of, I suppose, the data-related expectations?
So, like most organizations, we see this as something we continually have to evolve. We haven't reached the nirvana state yet. So we obviously continue to evolve along the journey. As organizations increase their maturity, depending on and dependency on data, with access to second and third party data, the data becomes more abundant and potentially more trustworthy. So it's no longer viable to really centrally own, govern, and manage data across the enterprise. It's not a model which can scale very easily. So while the plethora of data available to you increases, typically the sizes of the team doesn't. So that has to be managed in a different way. So to scale and federate, there are some very simple principles to apply. Number one, clarity of roles and responsibilities toward data in the organization. This is going to be a big cultural change for certain people, so they have to be clear about what their involvement is and when they need to step in and own and take decisions on the data. So clarity on the supporting operating model for data owners to navigate through, we don't want people to be scared off and realize they have to do everything by themselves. There is a support network. So what is that support network within an organization, including decisions on data, resource funding needs, et cetera, ensuring data and analytics solutions follow a build recipe, which includes a customer-centric approach. And that in turn results in transparency around demystifying some of the elements of technology and data within the business. A deployment of an enterprise data catalog is very useful. It can contain great information on business, KPI glossaries, data sources, assets, and products. So a very good place to start and a very good way of self-learning. And finally, the use of metadata for observability and data quality or lineage, and being able to measure that through capabilities you deploy within the business, which will secure trust in the data and the analytic and solutions that you provide. As I said, it's very much a continuous effort. But so long as you're working towards a common goal, you can break down some of those barriers.
100%, 100%. And I suppose it's important that different organizations ensure that they have the necessary data foundations and standards in place, which we've already kind of spoken about a little bit, to support that data federation. But what could happen if that's not done correctly?
Well, yeah, exactly. The data federation approach allows us to achieve our goals in data analytics in a way that is scalable, driven by consistency, and then empowering teams and individuals to add value built on top of those consistent standards with more agility. So ensuring we have the right mechanisms in place to determine and align on the data and process standards, performance indicators, and sources of truth allows us to create an ecosystem of highly governed, trusted data for the most critical decisions we need to make. And this consistency allows us to scale our data solutions across markets and domain, because this core foundation, although it takes time to build and govern, it gives you the trust in data. Now, once you have the trust of a working core of data for critical decisions, then it's much easier to be flexible in how the core is then enriched into a more federated model through data ownership outside of a central team. So in effect, teams become responsible for their areas of enrichment, which do not necessarily need the same level of data governance and standardization that the core does. Again, so what could happen if this isn't done correctly? If there are not aligned and agreed standards and owners across performance indicators, core master data entities and hierarchies, and also global processes which underpin those sources of data, then each incremental build on your data ecosystem, it doesn't follow a pattern that's been put in place. And thus it adds unnecessary cost, resource, etc. when trying to scale. We're building in potential technical debt, but also deviations from standards become unmanageable. Having a defined core of critical foundational data means we maintain heavy consistency and governance where we need it most, but then we take a much more flexible position outside of that core scope.
Thank you. And to kind of finish off this discussion today, I suppose people need to be fully aware of the data strategy and the outcomes, so everybody is on board within the business. In what ways can organizations emphasize the importance of data ownership and the responsibility, whilst clearly communicating the benefits of the data related solutions to their employees and also to their stakeholders as well?
So as described previously, people need to be involved and invested in the data solutions within their organization. This means ensuring the solutions have a customer-centric development approach where solutions are long-lived and continually tailored towards business needs, which obviously change over time. And also value is realized quickly through iterations, the iteration process. Business-led solutioning ensures you have advocates of data or advocates of your data solutions, and they're much more far-reaching than a central sort of technology or governance team. So they're much more far-reaching within the enterprise, and that results in a higher success of adoption, which then increases data literacy more broadly across the organization. So it becomes a much more scalable model. And when people are invested and feel excited about the solutions that help them in their role, then there's a halo effect and a stronger sense of ownership comes from that on data. So when you have a far-reaching set of advocates across the business driving the messages on the benefits of data, it becomes much easier as seeing is believing within the business.
Thank you. Well, thank you, James, for joining us today on the Food for Data interview series. I hope our audience has got a lot of insight from you. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.